this live stream that we are hosting from Every. It's 3 o'clock Eastern time. We're excited for more of you to join us as you come on. I am Kate Lee. I'm the editor-in-chief of Every. Every is the only subscription you need to stay at the edge of AI. We offer ideas, apps, and training. And that includes a newsletter, that includes 5 as of last week, apps, productivity apps, and trainings for both enterprise and corporate level and beginner level students. I am here with Mike Taylor, and I'm really thrilled to be here with Mike, who's just joined us full time to be the head of tech consulting. Mike's actually been a writer for us for several years, so I've had the pleasure of working with him for a long time already, and I'm now even more excited to work with you on a full-time basis. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, Mike?
Yeah, thanks, Kate. And I just cringed, actually. I looked at my title and I realized I capitalized tech consulting. I know that you'd hate that.
Yeah. Warms my heart. Thank you for noticing.
I can recognize my mistakes. No, I've been writing the column Also True for Humans for the past couple of years, which has been really fun. And I've been freelancing as a prompt engineer, I guess, depending on whether you want to call it that, for the past 5 years. But yeah, it's only been a couple of weeks now, but yeah, full on in the consulting team. I've already been to San Francisco, Miami, done a bunch of projects already, but also kind of in the lead in did a few projects over December and January as well. So it feels like it's been longer.
Great. And can you share any more about what it means to be the head of tech consulting? What does that actually mean? And you will be writing more about this, but what does that mean for your job?
Yeah, so head of tech consulting, we have a relatively small consulting team. People might be surprised, but we have Natalia who runs consulting, and then working with Natalia is myself on the tech side, and then we have a guy called Brooker Belcourt who's on the finance side. His background is in finance. He used to lead up the finance vertical for Perplexity, so he deals with hedge funds and investment banks, companies of that nature. And then for me, I'm mostly working with engineering teams at tech companies, as well as operations or marketing teams at those companies as well. So I focus much more on the kind of coding agent type stuff, as well as how do we start to automate knowledge work for the type of work that tech companies run into.
Great. Well, let's get started. So Mike has been teaching some classes in addition to doing trainings for big companies. He's been teaching classes, particularly around Claude Code. He's taught Claude Code for absolute beginners and then a more advanced course. And even just in those two cohorts, I think has learned an incredible amount about what is working, what isn't, and what is the state of AI adoption. So we thought this would just be a good opportunity to talk about what he's learned and what he's seeing out there, and what you might be able to pick up from this as well. So to get started, can you just talk, Mike, about your own coding journey and what is different in between pre-AI times and now?
Yeah, so I don't know if it's I was fortunate or unfortunate to learn code before AI, but I did a bunch of boot camps over the years. I did like some of the MIT courses and Harvard courses that are free online. I was running a marketing agency before I learned how to code, and I spent like 5 years, evenings and weekends trying to do this. Then finally, quit, went full time. Quit my agency. I was coding full time for about 6 months really before I started to build anything useful, and that was in 2020. And I was just happy to get into a situation where I had time to play around with GPT-3. So like I was just technical enough to be able to make an API call, basically, right? So that was super useful. And now obviously you don't have to be technical to use these tools, but back then you really did. And I would say that to some degree there is an advantage to being technical with these tools. Like they're not always very beginner friendly or user friendly, and there's this big barrier there. I wouldn't say necessarily that you have to know how to code to use Claude Code, but you definitely have to have someone to kind of take you through that and push you through and say like, this is the terminal, and like here's the, here's how you navigate to a folder, and here's how here's what Claude is doing for you under the hood. I think like that's still a big barrier for people, and it took me years to learn that the hard way. But now, the funny thing is like once you get Claude Code running, you can just ask Claude a lot of these questions. so,
Right,
so
right.
like it's getting him over that hump. I think like that's the big blocker.
Absolutely, and we can talk more. We'll talk more about what that's actually looked like. So I'm sure a lot of people ask you, or at least we've all read pieces about like, is coding dead? What is your view on that?
Yeah, it's funny because to some degree, like I don't write code anymore, right? Like I'm
Yeah.
not like I am probably closer to a product manager in terms of what I'm doing day to day. But I still read a lot of code. I still review a lot of code. So yeah, maybe it's like somewhere in between product manager and engineering manager. But so in that very literal respect, like coding is dead. I think a lot of companies are saying that AI is generating 100% of their code now, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
seeing that for sure amongst early adopters. That said, there's still a ton of manual code being written, and I still think in a lot of industries that makes a lot of sense, especially when the code base is very legacy, and there's like a lot of context that the AI doesn't have about your organization and
Mm-hmm.
historical things that you've tried. I think that can be really, really important.
Mm-hmm.
So I still think there's a case for coding. That said, like what we're trying to do with coding is never going to die.
Yeah.
Like I really learned how to code because I wanted to solve problems, and the problems I wanted to solve just like required me to write code to solve that problem. And
Mm-hmm.
now if I can just use Claude Code to do that step, then I can solve more problems. And that's
Mm-hmm.
I think people who learn how to code for the craft are really struggling right now because
Mm.
they're almost like mourning this loss of something they loved. Whereas like for
Yeah.
me, I only coded because I had to, because I couldn't afford a developer. That was
Mm.
that was the main thing. And so like now that I can afford a developer that's $200 a month that doesn't sleep, and can write better code than I could ever write,
Yeah.
then I'm off to the races. But I can totally understand that like a lot of people wouldn't be.
Right, right. That makes a lot of sense. Well, you have also taught the class on prompt engineering. You taught the Udemy class on, several 100,000 students. You've taught them,
Yeah.
and I know we've talked a lot about like, is prompt engineering still a role, still a job? These things have just sort of morphed and changed,
Yeah.
and tend to be a little bit more horizontal than vertical in terms of the skill set that they that they enable across
Mhm.
different jobs and different roles. But now you have been teaching Claude Code for absolute beginners. You led one cohort in February, in late February, and then you led a more advanced cohort, not for beginners. So just to be clear, that was not for beginners, the second one, last week. And curious, what are, we've just talked about sort of what are some common blockers that you have seen from this past cohort and just boot camps in general for people to get started doing this?
Yeah, this has been a really interesting experience because previous to this, most of my courses were not like live. I had done some corporate training for a few big companies where they wanted like a custom thing,
Mhm.
but like I had 300,000 students in my Udemy course, but like I'd never met any of them. They just watched the
Mhm.
videos that I recorded, so it's a very, very different skill set. And what I realized is given me a lot more empathy for like going slower and getting to the point where they like some of these things are just not obvious in any way and are
Yeah.
poorly named. Like one that came up recently in the course was why do they call it a pull request when you're
Mhm.
checking in code? You're actually pushing the code to GitHub, right?
Yeah.
So these things are like anachronisms, and to some degree. Developers get paid a lot of money because they're willing to put up with all this complexity. When
Mm.
most people are not. So any time someone dives into a more technical role or a more technical topic, they bump up against all these unfamiliar terms.
Mhm.
They're actually like pretty straightforward to understand once you get over that. But it's like almost like landing in a foreign country and everyone's speaking a language you don't understand. It's like very difficult to do anything or like feel competent in what you're doing when you don't speak the language. So I think like the language side of it is still a huge problem.
Right. And I think even in the past couple of months and different cohorts that we've taught and you've taught, so much has changed. 6 months ago or 4 months ago, you were teaching in the terminal. And now in this in this most recent one, you can just teach in the desktop app. And I think that kind of change is happening really fast, and that something that is the terminal, which is not necessarily native to non-coders, can be a hard hump to get over. And now that's not even something that is really what we're orienting around.
Yeah, we try and get this trade-off right, and I think it's hard to get right because in every class we have someone who's like barely opened, never opened Claude Code, right? And then we'll also have someone who's spent more than 10 hours and they've lied on their intake form.
That's not a beginner.
Yeah,
they're not a beginner.
Yeah, they're just like I just want to see what you guys are teaching, and unfortunately, like it's very hard to create content that matches both of those groups. So we try and get it right. I would say that as well as these courses, I've also done a few executive offsites recently, where we've been teaching through the consulting kind of org. I've been teaching a room of C-suite people like who haven't they've had people to do tasks for them for a long time, right? Because they've been working their way up through the management ladder, and I've been really surprised that they're actually like quite often willing to get into the terminal. So I would say that we try and make it easier for people to use Claude and get like get the outcomes that they want without having to add extra complexity. And you can do 80 to 90% of what you need to do in Claude Cowork in the desktop app without even having to kind of look at the code. But I would say that I'm seeing like a surprising willingness to like get more technical from people who traditionally like wouldn't have ever opened a terminal.
Yeah, well, I would count myself among those people who is now regularly in the terminal, but wasn't not so long ago. So we've said that this course, or what you've been teaching most recently, and what we're going to be doing again in the future, is really like Claude Code for beginners. I think the question I would say is, one, why do you think it's best to start there? And is there something you've observed from that cohort that is like particularly amenable to starting this kind of class?
Yeah, so I think that there have been these larger paradigm shifts within AI. Like obviously there's something new happening every week and it's hard to keep up, but broadly speaking, there was a big leap from no AI to ChatGPT, right? And then another big leap from ChatGPT to Copilot. I mean that both in terms of GitHub Copilot in your code, but also just the Copilot app. Like basically this paradigm of there's AI in your document and you're talking, it can see the document too. And I think that going from ChatGPT to Copilot is actually like as big of a change as going from no AI to ChatGPT. But then you have this next leap, which is basically working with an agent that's on your computer. And that's where I'd put Claude Code. That's where I'd put Codex. There's also the Google Gemini CLI version, but there's a really big difference, and it might be not necessarily obvious to someone who hasn't tried it, between like what Claude Code can do and what like Copilot type app can do. Claude Code can do it's almost like it's an employee that you're managing rather than someone that you're working together with. And I think that that's like a very different paradigm. And I think, even people who are really into AI, it might not be obvious to them until they see what sorts of tasks are now achievable and how many different things can you pull together into the same session. So I think like starting with that and getting them to have that aha moment is really important. And we can get into it, but there's like there's further paradigms that are like more experimental past that if we really want to like scare people.
Well, hopefully we'll have time for that. So just thinking about this course, so sort of, as I said, the two things we say is it's for absolute beginners and you're going to learn Claude Code in one day.
Yeah.
Can you take us through, Mike, what does this day look like and what is the scope of what you're actually teaching?
Yeah, so first of all, like this basically wouldn't have been possible a couple of years ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is pretty nuts. Like I remember there was a course, I think it was a company was called like Decoded, that was really
Mm-hmm.
popular for a while, where they're teaching you how to code in a day, and it was a great course. I know a few people that did it, but didn't really learn how to code in a day, right? Like you learned what
Right.
JavaScript was and what
Right.
HTML was and CSS, and you had like, to their credit, you put something live on the internet by the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say that you could learn how to code in a day, but you could also learn how to code in 10 years, right? So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
it depends on what you mean by learn how to code, right? And I
Right.
think that to some degree there is an element of that with this course, but I think what you actually do have by the end of the day is you are comfortable with Claude Code, and
Mm-hmm.
once you're comfortable with Claude Code, you get into the habit of asking it to do things before you jump to ChatGPT, or before you even jump into an app yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So through the course, we basically like get you over that hump. We get it installed on your computer. We have a bunch of TAs that swarm the chat, that will basically like walk you through how to get things set up, and we even
Mm-hmm.
kind of push people into breakout rooms off the main thread if they
Mm-hmm.
need extra help, because something always goes wrong. Like, you have 100 people who have never set this stuff up before, and like they might have something different on their machine that
Mm-hmm.
like we've never seen before, right? So I think like that's a really big part of it. And then we make it's about 50% build time.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it is like we're giving you the direction, and then we're giving you the introduction to the concepts, and we're showing you what we would do, but then you get to actually build something, and then you're putting it like you've got it like completely done by the end of the day,
Mm-hmm.
and once you've done one of these things, then you start thinking about all the other ideas. So I would
Mm-hmm.
say that it's just that necessary step to get you to the point where you have it running, you've done a task, you maybe set up some connectors as well so that the results you're getting are useful from Claude, and now you can just you're armed, you're ready to reach for it. And by the end of the day, once you've done all of that, you don't necessarily even need an instructor after that, because Claude becomes your instructor. Like, you can
Mm-hmm.
ask Claude like when you get stuck next time, right? So I think like it's a really big, it's more of a mindset shift, I think, than around the like any kind of secret information we have. Like, a lot of people ask me, hey, why don't I just do YouTube? And I'm like, if you want to go do YouTube, you should 100% go follow a YouTube thing and work through it, and be our guest, right? Like, you should, but like, I would say that you know all of the information for like the Harvard computer science course is online for free as well. So
Right.
why would you go to Harvard, right? I think it's like, I'm not
Right.
comparing us to Harvard, but I think
Yep.
that a big reason why you do a course like this is for the kind of a physical, kind of emotional, like motivation, like reaction that you get when you're in a room full of people all trying to do the same thing, and
Mm-hmm.
you have like people who actually care about the outcomes of the day there in the chat, who can walk
Mm-hmm.
you through it. So I think like that, if that's what you need, that kind of activation energy to get started, then it's worth it for you.
Mm-hmm. Can you can you recall what are some of the things that maybe someone said they wanted to start out to do at the beginning of the day? I would love to learn Claude Code to be able to do this in my job or
Mhm.
something similar. You know of an example of that?
Yeah, we have a bunch of examples that commonly come up. One is like organize my chaos, basically,
Mm-hmm.
plug it into my Gmail, into my Slack, like give me a daily update, tell me, what I'm doing today, and that's a really common use case that we use a lot in the consulting team. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we don't have an EA, like we don't have any kind of ops people in the team. We're literally just like using Claude for that, and we're
Mm-hmm.
doing scheduling, we're doing meeting notes, we're doing like, tell me, like, prepare me for my meetings, like where do I need to go and when, and like what do I need to look at in Slack? I think like that's like a really big one that usually blows people's minds when they can do it. Another one is like financial data analysis or Excel type stuff, or like kind of building custom dashboards. That's a really big one that comes up. Like, hey, just export this data. I want to, kind of see it in a custom dashboard. And that's the sort of thing that I used to have a team of 2 data scientists who, were full time, like doing this stuff all day, every day. And, it would take weeks for them to give me a custom dashboard for a client. Whereas like now, or I'd have to play around in Google Data Studio myself, like trying to do it in between meetings. And like now I can just I just ask Claude, I'm like, here's some data, tell me, like, make a custom dashboard, and then I could do that live on the call quite often with the client. And that's pretty rare. Like, how's the, what's the NPS score from the latest thing? And you just go, okay, let me just ask Claude, and then boom, like it's there, right? So I think like that's another big one that comes up.
Got it. And so over the course of the day, is it just in terms of getting people set up and getting started, is that something where everyone is sort of working together on the same problem, which is getting set up, and then they, and you said there's 50% is devoted to build time, that then the rest of the day, everyone is sort of working on their own project, but being guided by you and the other TAs?
Yeah, exactly. So we set specific challenges. And we might change this up over time. We're always changing after every course, really. Also, because Claude keeps releasing new stuff.
Yes.
But like I think one of the things we're starting to do more with courses is create like a wider selection of challenges they can work on, because when it was me just manually doing this for previous training sessions, I would have to like, I don't know, if you want to create a financial dashboard, then you have to like provide the students with some financial data to use, right? And unless you want to share, like, I think for a previous every course, you guys had shared some MPS data from dashboard, and you were happy to share that. But like, what do you do if you can't share that, right? And so one thing that Claude is really great for is customizing like data for those ideas, and even for like some of the executive offsites we've done, we've even made like 3 custom ideas that they could work on, like each based on their job role, like personalized to their job role. And like that's something that I would never have the time to do without Claude. But I feel like we're trying to make these sessions more personalized if possible, and like give them a wider range of options to build from, and then giving them some custom data that they can use to plug in. Like, if you want to automate, I don't know, like a Salesforce workflow, then you might not have access to Salesforce in that session, right? Like your IT team might not have given you access in time. So we come prepared with like, here's a bunch of example Salesforce data that, when you do get the connector, it will work the same way.
Now, if someone is thinking about this course or wants to take this course and is I have literally never opened Claude Code.
Yeah.
Where do they start on, the morning of the class?
Perfect. Yeah. No, it's yeah, I think it's that sweet spot between I've literally never opened it and like I've spent more than 10 hours. And so I would say you should like, in order to avoid any of the potential chaos on the day, and like missing out some of the material, you should come with like, you should try and get Claude Code running. Like literally just prompt it and say, hello, like, what's the weather like in Hoboken or whatever, and like, if you've done that, then if you've gone to that point, then you're going to be able to follow along the whole day, and you'll get, I think, a ton out of it. But it might take a bit of time to get to that point. So we try and tell people to kind of walk through that, and we have some steps in the onboarding guide there. But that said, if you do turn up and you've literally never opened it before and it's not running on your machine, like the TAs can help you work through that. That's part of the value that we provide. But I would say if you've built a product with Claude, or you have already automated a workflow with Claude, I would say that then you've kind of aged out of this course as well. You don't want to I think it would be probably better for you to do one of the more advanced ones.
Right. Yeah, we've sort of been using the rule of thumb of like under an hour with Claude
Yeah.
Code is this, and if you've spent more than that, then it might not be the right one for you. I see we've got a bunch of questions in this sidebar as well, which I will which I will get to shortly. So you sort of referred to this a little bit, but I'm just wondering, over these last couple of cohorts, have you, in sort of teaching people across skill levels, like the people who've never opened ChatGPT or Claude to people who are orchestrating swarms of agents, on their own, are you finding that there is sort of, can you speak to both of those groups in the same time, or is this really very, very different mindsets?
Yeah, very different mindsets. So, day to day, like one of the things I'm doing is I have like three OpenClaw,
Mm-hmm.
AI agents, basically like running 24/7 for various reasons. I'm using like Kieran, who we work with on Cora. Like he has compound engineering, this kind of plugin that we use day to day to basically scale up the amount of development work we can do without introducing too many bugs. So like that's where I'm at on a day-to-day basis. And when I'm kind of sharing advice between friends, that's kind of where we're living. And I would tell like all my friends like not to join this course specifically because it's not like you cannot like talk about agent swarms in the same breath as you're talking about like this is hey meet the terminal,
Right, right.
like if you're not already completely AI degenerate like me,
No
and
entry.
so I would say it really depends on your personal comfort level,
Mhm,
but like I would say like a lot of that, like the really advanced stuff, like doesn't exist anywhere actually. Like it's in
mm,
person. Like people are talking about it in events and things like that.
mhm,
But like we want to try and get more of that into courses and into content as well. Like definitely for my column, like getting more of that material out there. But yeah,
right.
I would say yeah. Broadly speaking, you want to really think about like where you are at on this journey, and it is totally fine to be wherever you are on the diagram.
Mhm,
The important thing is that you just like know where you are, right? Like
yeah.
are you at the point where you just like you're not really using ChatGPT, in which case I wouldn't go straight to Claude Code. I would say like start with the chat interface and start getting used to that, right? Like
Mhm,
if you don't have Copilot open in your documents, or if you don't using Google Gemini in your documents, I would also say like probably like it might be a bit of a leap to go to Claude Cowork or Claude Code, and I would say you don't want to skip a step. Like get
mhm,
comfortable with that step. And I had the benefit of doing that incrementally because I started in 2020 and
mhm,
like I had to make an API call to GPT-3, which was a pain. But then ChatGPT came out, and then I started experimenting with more stuff, and
mhm,
I've kind of seen these things in progression, so they make sense to me. But I think if you're now just getting deep into AI, just allow yourself that progression as well.
mhm.
Otherwise, I think it's pretty easy to spin out and like feel like you're overwhelmed and not getting value from the material that you're looking at.
Got it. We have a couple questions from people on the stream that I'm going to go to, and then we can come back to some other things. One question is, do we need to download the desktop app, or can we work with it entirely on the web?
Yeah, good question. I like to download the desktop app specifically for one reason, which is then it can work in a folder locally on your computer.
Mhm,
And I think that's one of the major benefits of using something like Claude Cowork. Not even if you're not getting into Claude Code yet, I would say you can experiment with Claude Cowork and you can connect it to a folder, and that will give you a bit more of a sense of why this is special, because you don't have to do things in one chat session. You can say, okay, do this piece of work and then save it in the folder, and then you start a new session and you say,
mhm,
this piece of work is in the folder, like start from here and keep going. So I think like that's a really big paradigm shift, and without having the desktop app or having the terminal on your own computer, you kind of miss that. And you also have this extra setup step of like you have to learn GitHub,
mhm.
which is a whole topic in itself, and some of the, still like a lot of senior engineers mess up
Right.
So yeah, I would say that like Claude, as I call it, where it's like running from GitHub and then kind of giving you a pull request. There's like a
Mm-hmm.
whole like developer etiquette around that that
Mm-hmm.
you need to like learn actually how to be an engineering manager really to make use of that very well. I use
Mm.
a combination of the two, but yeah, I think it starts with the terminal and starts with the folder on your computer.
Right. Another question is that, Mike, in all of your teaching, you've seen people go from zero to building, building with tools and with confidence. And what's the difference between the ones who have been able to actually ship a project and the ones who stall out? Is it a technical gap or is it a process gap?
It's a persistence gap.
Mm.
Yeah, I like to say there's no such thing as a technical person, just a persistent one. Because like you become technical just by like running into these barriers and like not stopping. And it's easy to get discouraged though, because I tried and failed to learn how to code myself multiple times over the
Mhm.
years. So it was only really when I like had 3 months full time to do it that I was like, well, I've got to do this. I have literally nothing else. And it was during COVID, so it was like extra. I was like, I'm going to become employable now, because we don't know what's going to happen. So it was you have to have either the motivation to push through those barriers when you hit them and be like happy to see an error message because you're like, great, now I'm going to learn something new. Actually, like I have a friend who taught me a lot how to code, a guy called Rob Desmond, and he used to say like it was like almost annoying because he's like, great, we got another error, and I'm like, dude, like, how are you so happy about this? I feel like a failure, and now I think about that myself. I'm like, oh, great, like we got another error. Like when I get an error now with Claude, I think, oh, great, like there's an opportunity to figure out something the models aren't good at yet, and
Right.
like that's content for every, right? Like,
Right.
so yeah, I feel like like having that positive attitude and kind of keep going, like the persistent kind of approach. I think like that's actually the important thing, not necessarily like where you are right now technically.
Right. I think that's something I've learned as well, which is you get an error message, you just send that error message to Claude and say,
Yeah.
what does this mean? What do I need to do? So you're sort of in a constant dialogue and going back to it and saying, no, you tell me. You tell me what I need to do
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
now. I know there are a lot of questions in general around sort of security and access and things like that. What kind of access do you give Claude Code in your own systems?
Yeah, I think again, this is one of those things where you shouldn't skip a step. But
Mm-hmm.
like personally, I have it like I have like Claude running with root access, dangerously skip permissions, um, on at least a couple of computers. And
Mm-hmm.
the reason is that I've built up that trust over a long time. I've seen like the
Mm-hmm.
things it can do. I mean, I still think a lot about security in terms of like if for example I have access to a code base that is more sensitive or production level code base, then for that I would like tend to use more guardrails and maybe like a developer sandbox,
Mm-hmm.
which is like a way to set aside part of your computer that the Claude can only run in that part, and then it can stop it from deleting the rest of your files or
Mm-hmm.
sharing your API keys or something. So I think a lot about security, but I think it has to be specific to the project, and you have to build the trust over time because obviously like if you just hire a new employee today, you don't give them like a corporate bank account on day one, right? Like
Right.
I remember when I used to be in marketing. It took us 3 months in my first job to get what they call like privileges, where
Mm-hmm.
like I could only send my boss like here are the campaigns I want to put on Google AdWords, and then my boss
Mm-hmm.
would put them on. Like I didn't have the right to like publish anything to the account yet, and
Mm.
I kind of think about it that way. Like once you get to the point where you're just getting bored because Claude is so good at this stuff that you're just like fine, let me it's actually safer than me, like I'm just going to run it. Yeah, I had a similar
Right.
experience with Waymo as well. I don't know if you've driven one of the self-driving
I have
cars.
not, but I'm sure.
Yeah, it's like I was like, oh my god, this is kind of terrifying. Like I'm about to get in a car that's driving itself, and I noticed like within like 10 minutes, I was just checking my phone and like not even looking
Mm.
at the road. It was like felt so safe because so I was like, yeah, I feel that way with Claude as well.
Um, Interesting. Along those lines, we have some people who are curious. For non-technical people, which is what this class is for, is how can we do proper guardrailing or sandboxing ways of developing solutions, dashboards, and apps? Are there any rules of thumb, like giving it access but not full access?
Yeah. So this is a big question. Like I have some clients in like a client in the healthcare space, for example. So they have to think really carefully about this, and they have to have certain levels of human review for things like legal review as well. So I would say one thing that people don't really think about is that you can use more AI to solve the problems that AI causes. So, for example, if you're using AI to generate code, and you're like worried that it's not going to be correct, or like it's going to cause it's going to take the database down or something, you can then create another session and say, an intern on my team just wrote this code. Can you review it? Right. So like it might actually pick up some things that you might have missed as a human. So I think like the best people who are best at this, like building trust with AI, it's quite often because they've set up these systems to basically spend more tokens. Like Kieran, we mentioned, but for his engineering plugin, Compound Engineering, we have it deploys like 12 sub agents. I think he's up to now, where it's like one of them is a security expert that looks at like the security app. Another one is like best practices for the coding language you're using, and there's 10 others. So I would say that like actually when I run that, I trust the code more than if it was just me reviewing it. So I would say that I've seen companies have like a brand police AI that runs every time they try and send an email, or every time they try and publish an ad. The brand police AI runs, and it just tells them whether it's on brand, things like that. So I would say that like don't look at AI as like the cause of the problem. You can look at it sometimes as the solution to security problems as well.
That's fascinating. We have a couple of questions just asking really about skill level, which I think is really important, and I know we've talked a lot about that as well. One is, if there's a course that's between like 0 and 1 hours and a course that's for 10 hours plus, what is the difference between what is the difference between those courses? And is there, what's in that gap? Is there a gap between that 1 and 10?
Yeah, good question. So part of it is, I would just say that like if you're doing a full day, you actually have time to build stuff yourself. And the biggest complaint I get, or not really complaint, but like thing that people mention as a friction point with AI for the consulting work I do, they say that they don't have time to play with this stuff. Like they don't have time to save themselves time. I'd love to automate my job. I think maybe you've even said the same thing from the editorial perspective. But but like that's one sneaky thing that a workshop does, is it actually just buys you at least half a day or a full day to like step outside of your normal day-to-day role. Like nobody's going to bother you if you're in a Claude Code camp all day, or maybe they still will, but you can ignore them. And then you actually get to build something without like, oh, I've only got 5 minutes before my next meeting. So I would say like that's a really big difference, is the build time. But I tend to think like pretty much anything could be taught in 5 minutes or 5 years, or somewhere in between. It just depends on how deep you want to go. Like I don't know, like I'm pretty sure I could teach a 5-year-long university degree in Claude Code, even though it's only been out for just over a year. There's so much, like, because to really understand Claude Code, you have to understand actually like almost all software development, and maybe even all knowledge work, right? Like to like really go deep on like how do we train skills, and like one of the big things we talk about a lot in the office is this is like a new form of management science, right? Like learning how to manage AI agents is just as hard, like just as difficult as learning how to manage humans. And nobody's had that management training yet. So I really think that it could be like a university degree in itself.
That's fascinating. We just had a new colleague start today and did a lot of preparation with onboarding, which is what you would do with a human, but is not necessarily something we've thought about with an AI. So speaking of someone, and sort of talking about all of these other tools, and again, back to levels, we just have a question as, what's the class for someone who has created agents in Copilot Studio, GPTs and ChatGPT, and websites in GitHub, but still doesn't know how to use Claude Code?
Yeah, interesting. So they already know how to code, but they haven't specifically adopted AI.
Yes.
Yeah, interesting. I would say that it's a weirdly like all this information is online, right?
Yeah.
Like so the way that I learned how to use Claude Code, as someone who was a developer, is I just installed Claude Code and I started asking it to do stuff. And if it failed, then I looked at the code it wrote and I went, "Oh, that's weird. Like, why did it do that?" And then I realized, oh, you need to make a change. Like my prompt should have been better because I didn't
Mm-hmm.
include this context, or oh, it can't do that because it doesn't have access to my Gmail, or whatever it is. So I would say to some degree, the reason you join a course is really to hear it from the people who are like living it and like get their direct attention to your problems, so that like you can get over that hump. So I would say like first and best thing is like you just do it and start playing with it, if you already are technical. But I know that's a terrible, like not a useful answer. So I would say the second best thing is make friends who've gotten over that hump already. Like I learned a
Right.
lot from like different people I've met, like in the office or at events, or just online. Like actually in a really bad habit of like meeting strangers from the internet now. Now that I moved to New York. So like a lot of people I've followed on Twitter for a while, I'm like trying to talk to them now in person.
Right.
Yeah. So like and I think you get a lot of information that way. But then I would say like if neither of those avenues are working for you, then then I would say like rather than a course in particular, I would say you probably actually might be better with like one-on-one tutelage.
Mm.
So like I actually paid a guy who used to work at Flatiron, the coding boot camp. I paid him like $60 an hour to teach me some like databases. It was because I didn't understand databases pre AI, and he like made like a custom curriculum. I think I only paid him for like 10, 12 hours, something like that. So like for $600, which is 3 months of Claude Code, I managed to like learn databases, right? And I think that was more engaging. So I would say like, yeah, if you already have a lot of the technical skills and you don't have and you have like specific problems that you're running into, it might be better to not do like a broader course, if that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I want like people to like basically only do this course if it's really right for them.
Totally. Totally. Oh, definitely. Um, Another question we got is for teams and not engineers who are using Claude Code. Can you recommend best practices for keeping shared business and strategy context updated? So the context updated, not just the code. And is it, do you use GitHub? Do you use Google Drive? Something else?
Yeah, this is like the $1 million question at the minute
Yeah.
that nobody is ever solving, because to some degree it's you only really know that the context is stale when AI makes a mistake, right? And even then, like you have to have that context in order to solve it. Like actually, we had this problem at the marketing agency I ran. Like we had all of our company docs were like constantly outdated, and like even we had a bunch of standard operating procedures, and I'd find out that someone in the team wasn't using them because they were like, oh, it doesn't really work that way anymore. And I'm like, have you updated it? No, I don't have time. So I think it is like a universal problem that doesn't go away with AI necessarily. But I would say one thing you can do is aim for connectors over like content. I don't know, like one thing you could do is like download, like say for every, right, like we have every MCP internally, right? I could just download everything I've ever written on every by like like it would just like keeping it in a GitHub repository, or today I just asked the MCP like, hey, can you just get like my latest posts, and it did. So like getting directly accessing that data directly, or accessing that context directly from the live tools, I think like is one way to keep it up to date.
Okay. Um, So one thing, something some of the people in the chat have talked about that you and I know have talked about a lot is like keeping up with the pace of change. It's very overwhelming. We have even said we have to update our curriculum
Mhm.
for everything new on a non-infrequent basis. How do you keep up with the pace of change? Slash, are there recommendations that you have?
Am I keeping up with the pace of change? It doesn't feel like it.
I mean, probably better than most.
No, I mean honestly, like nobody feels like they are. I think is the truth.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that like one way to ground yourself in this, and I'm always hyping AI, but if you I'm just in Brooklyn at the minute, like we're both here, but if you walk down the road, like if you're from the 1980s or 1970s, if you walk down the same road, like what would you notice that was different?
Mm-hmm.
And like the only thing I can think of is iPhones, right? So even though there's been a ton of technological change with the internet and everything, like actually there are like very few things that are really that impactful in your day-to-day work, and that's how I keep myself grounded with AI. I just look for like what actually is impactful, that I keep coming back to. That like my friends keep coming back to, and they say it's become like a core part of their life. And there are when you use that filter, there are like only really like 10 interesting things that have happened in the past
Mm-hmm.
5 years. Yeah, not like because like when things come out, like there's a lot of failed projects, there's a lot of like interesting things that happened that we thought were going to be very impactful and they turned out not to be, right? So
Mm,
I would say like you can cut across the noise just by really just like leaning back a little bit and saying, okay, like what's still, it's like not like, oh, this matters today, it's like what still matters tomorrow. I think
mm,
is something you can use if it is getting a little bit overwhelming. You
mm-hmm.
can pull back a little bit, and you at worst you'll be like a couple months behind the frontier, which
Right, right,
isn't too bad. Yeah,
right. So I know that for some people it's just hard to know again where to start. What am I going to use this for? What are
yeah.
some things you've seen, like even underrated ways of using AI that may not seem the most obvious, but are actually really useful?
I would say that the framing of the question is wrong. Like, what will I use this for? I think it's like what can't you use this for, right? Like,
Mm,
I think actually you got to try and find cases where it's not working. I think
mm,
that's a more useful thing to discover, because that's where we will continue to be employed, right? Frankly, like that I look for cases like that all the time, and I'm
mhm,
like actually kind of happy when I find something that Claude is bad at. Still, the way I would flip this is I would say like try and use it for everything, and then note down where it fails, and then when the
mhm,
next model comes out, then try that thing again and see if it works now.
mhm,
So like right now, for example, it's still pretty bad at PowerPoint, and
mhm.
that annoys me because I would like love to offload my PowerPoint deck creation to AI, but it like I know that I need to spend like a good couple of weeks to really like optimize that and get it kind of working okay, and to the point where I need to like even modify the deck template that we use, because it's just not like it's not very like AI friendly.
Right.
But like in 6 months, maybe that problem goes away. In which
Mhm,
case, like great, I can stop worrying about it.
mhm.
So yeah, I would say try and use it for everything if you can,
Okay.
and then like when it doesn't work, then you'll have learned a lot more than if you just sit back and wait for a use case to materialize.
Right. So what are some maybe some like non-obvious mistakes that you've seen people make with AI? I think we can all know some obvious ones or know when we are seeing that.
Yeah. Yeah. So one mistake I would say is almost everything ends up being the same mistake, which is context. So
Mm,
either you gave it too much context and distracted it, or filled up the session. And there's this concept called context rot, where
mhm.
basically like if the more information you put into that chat session, the more likely it is to go off the rails. Like it's going to get distracted, it's going to get confused, you're going to have conflicting information in there. So I would say that that's also true for humans, right? Like is my the name of my column.
Mm-hmm.
I really believe that like at the end of the day, if you fill it up too much with information,
Mm-hmm.
then it's going to do a bad job. In the same way that if you give someone too much, you'll overwhelm them. But also too little context. So
Mm-hmm.
if you haven't given it something that someone you would give an intern to do that work, then you're like asking a lot of it, without it has to kind of guess that context.
Right.
So I would say it almost always comes down to like what was in the context window at the time that you asked it to do that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Um, we have another question for you about in terms of what you actually taught. So for people who are coming from creative fields like music, writing, and design,
Mhm.
this is what someone says. What's the thing that tends to surprise them the most about working with Claude Code from your own experience teaching?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, and I love it when people have like use cases like that because obviously it's really cool like the first time you see it organizing your inbox or giving you a daily briefing, but like when someone's like making music with Claude Code, I think like that's very cool. So I want to encourage people with maybe less corporate like interest to try this stuff, and I think like that's where the jagged edge is right now. Like it'd be really interesting because like I think humans have better taste, for example, than Claude
Mm,
does. But like Claude, knows all the APIs to like program different things, and like AI does a pretty good job of generating like music. Like I don't know if you tried Suno,
mhm,
like there's a lot of potential there. I think. So yeah, I would say that I think that the thing that surprises people is that it can actually help. Because if you come from a creative background, you're not used to solving your problems by talking to an AI, right? Like
mhm,
it tends to be like you use software to make music and stuff, but I think it's a little bit more alien than it would be for a knowledge worker who that maybe they've used Excel macros before,
mhm.
or maybe they've like worked with a tech team before to like build a dashboard or something. Like I feel like it's more obvious for engineers and for knowledge workers than it is for creative teams, and they're
Right.
usually positively surprised at how much you can do.
Mhm. Got it. So if you I'm sure people ask you this all the time, but can you see or say, where is this all going a year from now, 5 years from now? Are you able to forecast in any way?
I'm able to forecast, but I don't know how much you should trust the forecasts. Yeah, I mean, to some degree, I saw like this coming because in 2020 I was messing around with GPT-3 and I was like, oh, this is
Mhm,
kind of crappy right now, but I can see where it's going. I think if I the timing is the hard thing, right? Like understanding is it going to happen in 6 months versus 1 year versus 2 years, and also if you zoom out and like follow current trends, like you get into this weird place where you're like talking about utopia or dystopia, and I think
yeah.
that the answer is probably somewhere in between, right? Like it'll be hard to know, but I would say like one thing I'm really confident on is that pretty soon we'll have you'll be working with more AI coworkers than you are human coworkers, and it won't be. I don't think it'll be because they let all the humans go. I think it'll be. I actually haven't really seen anyone legitimately fired because of AI.
Mhm,
I've seen a lot of companies announce that it was because of AI, but
right.
really, I think a lot of that is covering dysfunction,
Mm,
and it's a good excuse, right? It's
mhm,
like firing people because of the economy or
right.
whatever. Like I think there's other people hiring people in the same economy, right? So I would say like that's actually the bigger thing is that we'll have like as soon as AI coworkers become more stable and usable, like it might be OpenClaw, it might be something else,
Mhm,
then you'll see it very quickly proliferate where you might be
mhm,
not just like managing or working with an AI, but like managing a whole team of them.
mhm, Mm-hmm. So I know you do a lot of this for executives and companies as well. So what is like, what is the version of this that you teach to executives, and how is it different?
Yeah, I think for executives, I actually try to teach a lot of the same stuff,
Mm-hmm.
just because I think it is important for them to really see what their people are doing, and what the hype is about.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the same time that now everyone is a manager of AIs, I also think that like people who are already managers are pretty well established in terms of like the skill set they need to manage AIs. And you're seeing even in some cases you have like executives who are like vibe coding, like Dan,
Mm-hmm.
we could talk about, but
Right.
like Toby from Shopify is a good example.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's actually committing more code today than he did when he was solo, coding Shopify, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
before he was executive of a publicly traded company.
Right.
So I would say that like um, all of the things that people struggle with AI, like context switching, understanding how to like brief them properly,
Mm-hmm.
like setting good evaluation metrics, like how do we measure good performance? Like actually, managers have been doing that forever in their careers, and so I think they actually have an advantage when it comes to managing AI. So I think like once they're usually take a bit more to like learn the technical side and to
Mm-hmm.
get Claude like really like doing something useful for them. But once they get there, they immediately understand it, and then they go much more aggressive, much more quickly than the average person.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think executives are, I think, for a good reason, like they want to be skeptical of this stuff to some degree because if they believe the hype, that actually that's like a pretty radical thing, like for that has a lot of implications for their whole company.
Mm-hmm.
But then as soon as they can see through the hype and they try it for themselves and they see like, okay, I get it. It's like it is actually pretty amazing, but like it can't do this and this yet, and we need
Mm-hmm.
to upskill here and here. Then they get like quickly into the action. So I think like that's the difference. Is like they're slower to adopt, but also like faster to execute once they've adopted.
Got it. That's so interesting. We have just a couple minutes left. You spoke a little bit about this in the beginning, and there are now a lot more people on the stream, so it just might be helpful to talk a little bit more about this, which is, um, we're teaching this class Code for Absolute Beginners. We teach it live. It is cohorted. We don't do an asynchronous, video version.
Yeah.
Why take a course like this? Why spend $1,000 when you could go to YouTube, or you could, I'm sure, find an asynchronous version to take yourself through on your own time? Like, what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, it's funny actually, and I really like how there's so much alignment with the team. I saw someone on the team saying, "Hey, I think it was customer service kind of come in and said, hey,
Mhm.
someone just wants to buy the course and they're not going to be able to attend because they're in Europe and it's going to
Right.
be really late. And they're willing to spend $1,000, but like they just want the recordings, and we're like." I don't think they should buy the course,
No.
and it was pretty unanimous actually through the
Yeah.
team, which I really loved because I felt the same way about it. um, I think that um, the value of the course is really um, the energy and the motivation you get from being there on the day and carving out that time to do it together, and like the social aspect of you're in the chat, you're seeing what other people are saying
Hmm.
live. I found that you really can't replicate that just by watching a recording. And
Hmm.
I've created a lot of recorded content, right? Like, my Udemy course is 24 hours at this point. If you wanted to watch it end to end, um,
Wow.
and I think there's a real place for that. But I would say recorded content works when you're already very bought in
Hmm.
to that thing, and you're like, hey, I know for sure that I need to create a LangChain agent, right? Because my boss has told me I need to learn LangChain, and that's
Hmm.
what we're using, and so like it's well worth say doing my Udemy course and then like watching the LangChain stuff.
Hmm.
And you can pay a lot of attention to that because your job depends on it, right? Whereas I would say that like a course like this, like a live course, is much better at I'm excited for this. I'm bought into this. Identity-wise, I feel like the sort of person that should be using Claude Code more, or like I really want to be like I've seen other people do it, and I'm amazed by it. And I want to be part of that, but like I just haven't been able to get over the hump. And I don't think you can get over the hump very easily on your own. And that's what like being there on the day is for.
Great. Well, we are at time. Thank you everyone for attending. We are launching our next cohort of Claude Code for Absolute Beginners that Mike Taylor will teach. It will take place on April 14th. We are officially launching it tomorrow, but we will share with you in the comments in a moment where you can sign up or just learn more about it. We have a website that explains everything that we've talked about here. And we would love to see you there. And of course, if you have additional questions, you can always, email us at Every or find us online. But we're really excited to see what you guys all end up doing with Claude Code. Is there anything more, Mike, that you would want to say?
No, thanks guys for all the great questions. I've just seen them all stream in. It's an exciting time. There's a lot of fun stuff. And even if you don't take the course, I think just download Claude and start messing around with it.
Great. All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, Kate.
Bye.